Good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad you could join us today for Coffee and Conversation. Today, we're going to hear from Adam Cornette from Parks Conservancy, and he's going to talk about our beautiful and amazing parks in Hamilton, and I'm sure we have way more of them than you realize. So we are on a Zoom call, so if you have questions, you can interrupt Adam during his presentation. I'm sure he won't mind. If you're on Facebook Live, type your question in and Laura will repeat it for Adam to answer the question for you. So with that being said, we're going to get started. You know who I am. We're going to find out who all of you are, and then we'll turn it over to Adam. So Gino or Laura, are you guys doing self-introductions or am I doing that?
I can. I'm good.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber. Glad to have you all with us today. So as I call on each of you, tell me who you are and what company you're with. Scott, we'll start with you.
Scott Hetzel with Saxon.
Wonderful. And Billy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Billy with Family Promise of Butler County.
Gino. He wasn't expecting that so quick, was you?
No, somebody just came in, so I got to write down this note. It was for Dan. Gino McGowan. I am the Director of Member Relations at the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Wonderful. Jennifer, good to see you. You're still muted.
Yep.
There you go.
I was trying to get unmuted. Thank you, Laura. I'm Jennifer Pierce with Modern Psychiatry and Wellness. We provide behavioral health services in the Butler County area and beyond.
Glad to have you with us. Sandy.
Good morning, Sandy Kusnoff with Frank's Glass.
Glad to have you with us. And Tracy.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Stivers. I'm with BCW Workforce.
Glad to have you with us, Tracy. All right, so that's all for us. Adam, introduce yourself and we'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks so much for having me. I'm Adam Cornette. I'm with the Hamilton Parks Conservancy. Actually going into my third year with the Conservancy. I started back in January of 2022. I know I kind of like this format. I wasn't sure. Dan stopped me on the on the street last week. He's like, "Hey, any chance you could do coffee and conversations?" I was like, "I actually haven't done one of these before, or attended one." So it's kind of a neat. I think it's kind of neat community outreach to a lot of people involved in organizations that we may not coordinate with regularly. So kind of a cool opportunity to get some word out there about what we do and then get to see all of you. So I don't know. I like to start when I get to talk to groups. The big thing is I think a lot of people have misconceptions of what the Hamilton Parks Conservancy is, who we're affiliated with, how we function, and then even the scope of our park system. So a little background, starting in 2015, Steve Timmer, who was the predecessor to my position, he worked with the city, Joshua Smith and many others over at the administration. They went and visited a couple of larger cities to kind of look at how they were handling their park system, because Hamilton operated like most municipalities. They had a parks department, probably at one time as Parks and Rec, which had pools and then the park system itself. And they were trying to look at some other ways to manage them. So, there's this thing called a conservancy, which is an affiliation with the local government, but it's its own entity, and it's a 501c3, which we'll get into why that's really beneficial to us and how we operate in a second. But so after visiting that, they wrote up kind of a management agreement, went over what properties and different things like that, and so birthed the Hamilton Parks Conservancy. And being a 501c3, prior to this, I worked for the city of Blue Ash, so worked in that municipality, kind of how they function with their parks and rec. It is beneficial, but at the same time, there's a lot of pros and cons. The biggest pro we have now, being a nonprofit, is our main goal is literally just supporting the community, improving our parks, providing safe, clean spaces for everyone to be able to access at no cost, really. And that's our main goal. I'm not here to stash money away. I'm here to improve the parks and offer the accessibility to everybody. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Pulled up our main page, which I have on my computer behind me. but the other big benefit, which this is still kind of new to me, working on it a little bit, is being able to accept donations, do fundraising. We have more accessibility to different grants. I'm in the middle of writing 3 right now for different improvements around the parks that, the government's a little more limited on what type of grants they can apply for. And I have a lot, we can do a lot more, because usually one of the main requirements is that you have to be a 501c3 in order to apply for grants, which is great. Because the way we operate, we kind of you have limited revenues to an extent. And so it's like, we have our improvements that we want to do, but outside of fundraising, we can't really increase our revenues off of the assets we currently have. Going into that, we have, 42 parks, I think. Sorry. It seems to kind of change because we acquire some parcels from the city, and it kind of expands what we do. But 42 parks, and then since 2022, full 18-hole golf courses as well. So it's a lot. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand how many parks are in their own city and how unique that is to a city of this size. I mean, this city of 65,000 residents, or give or take. It's, I was expecting, when I heard of this position, 20-ish parks would be pretty standard. Even coming, Blue Ash is a city of, I'd say, 15 to 20,000 if you take away all the people that work there, because it's largely based on how many people work at the headquarter businesses there. Really, parks wise, we only had like 5. And then the comparison coming over here is the budget I used to work with for 5 parks was like easily 6 times what we function on here, and we had 2 golf courses, and golf was separate over it, working for Blue Ash too. So, it's a huge testament on what we've been able to do as an organization over 9 years to not only just maintain our parks and maintain our golf courses, but continually improve them. I mean, it's nothing out of the norm to average $300,000 to $500,000 in capital improvements every year. And so it takes a lot of financial planning and responsible planning to do that, but we're able to utilize, what we have fairly efficiently. It's been a really good experience, and I mean, we've seen some really big changes over the last really 6 months. We had it would have been our second park superintendent recently retired in December. So we have Jordan, who's been with us now for 8 years. He's a young guy. He's like 26. But this is his passion. This is what he wants to do. So we're being really supportive of him and moving him into a superintendent role. So he's going to be very busy and learning a lot this year. We did some personnel shifts at Potter's golf course specifically, where we had our golf superintendent move into a golf operations role, and we have another 26-year-old that's the superintendent at Potter's now too. So, it's nice seeing a lot of the younger local guys that have worked for us for pretty much since they started working at 18, or taking an interest in what we do, because that's probably one of our biggest difficulties is just getting personnel to do this job. I think that really spiked for us, and not even this, our organization specifically. Parks in general, the green industry, and when I say green industry, I mean mostly landscaping, turf, things like that. 2020 made it seemed like that was like the kickoff for just making hiring very difficult. It's a very competitive field as far as getting workers. It is labor intensive. You're out in the elements most days, and historically, it's not a high paying field. I spent 13 years working in golf. I did it since I was 15 years old. Worked in golf maintenance. Took a break for a little while due to the golf course I grew up working for having some financial issues. And, that's not, everybody thinks because golf is an expensive sport that it also pays really well. I'm going to tell you that's not true. and you work a lot of hours. You know, I probably wouldn't be married and have kids if I still worked in golf. If I was going to be 100% honest, I was a superintendent for 3 years. I mean, you're on the clock pretty much 24 hours a day from March through November. And fortunately, I worked a mile from my house, so that made it decent. But I mean, it's a lifestyle, and so we try to be very supportive of our employees, and looking at competitively how are our wages, what benefits can we offer if we can't increase wages. So really, since 2022 we began offering health insurance. We offer a 401k for our employees. This is the first year we're going to do a match for our 401k, and so we're just trying to look at how do we stay competitive in this field when, I mean, literally you can go work pretty much anywhere, it seems like now, for $22 an hour, which is fairly high. And for this industry used to be $8 to $10 an hour was no problem to get anybody to work. And that is so far from the reality now that we still haven't solved that problem on how to get people in the door, because it's hard to convince people, hey, do you want to sweat a lot and get really dirty every day for like $14 an hour? So if you have any answers, please shoot me those, because it's a struggle. But anyways, kind of back to try to come a little full circle here, back to our our park system. Every time I have one of these meetings, we've been meeting a lot with middle school, high school groups to kind of get engagement into their parks in the community. I'm like, okay, do you guys know how many parks you have? Most of them don't. And I'm like, well, there's 42, and that's within the city limits. I'm not even going like outside the city. That's just within the city limits. There's 42 parks. They vary a lot. I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with like Joyce and Markham and Veterans and things like that, but it's like there's a lot of small parks that are even tucked away in neighborhoods where you wouldn't even know they were there if you didn't go on our website, pull up the map, or were from that neighborhood. They can be as small as a quarter of an acre, and they can be as large as 230. So we have a lot of variance. We care for a little north of 1,300 acres with 75 people peak season. We actually only have about 12 to 15 full-time employees, depending on what we're doing. 3 of us are in the office, and then we have 3 superintendents. So we all had to kind of not necessarily be a jack of all trades, but we do a little bit of everything. I mean, it's nothing surprising. I do laugh. Kevin Noonan, when he was he's our assistant director, and he came on last August, and the first day he came to kind of do a ride around just to get a feel for what we were doing. It was like a 4-hour day. And in that 4-hour day, I think we went to Markham because we had one of the splash pad pumps was having an issue. So he got to go over there with me. I got a call. We ran over to North End, which is LJ Smith Park. He helped me dig a hole because I had to find a break in some of our water lines. And then we went and probably did 10 other things. So it's like, yeah, it's organized chaos sometimes. But it works. And, we're trying to invest in personnel. So at least we aren't running everyone ragged, and you're not having to do 100 different things. So, but, something we're working on recently, as I said, we have all these different parks, and they're all different. Markham, I know a lot of people are, sorry, our dog just barged in my office. I'm going to close the door real quick. We have an office dog, so if you haven't been in our office, his name's Bruno, and he's a 70-pound American Bulldog, and he just kind of comes in and goes. So, but our parks are all kind of utilized as neighborhood specific. A good example, Markham's a good event space. As Dan can attest, we have Hamilpalooza. With the chamber hosts Hamilpalooza, they do the flea, and we, just a variety of events that park's used for, because of the utilities out there, the location in the city, and it really serves a good purpose as a central hub for the city. But then you have smaller parks in neighborhoods like Jefferson Park. If you drive by, it's pretty unassuming. You'll have a small playground, couple picnic tables, and then you'll see like an open green space. And the reason that that green space always stays, it looks unutilized, but that's not really the purpose. That neighborhood has a very significant passion for soccer. So we leave that area open because we'll partner with groups like Miami University, FC Cincinnati, and they'll actually host soccer clinics out there that utilize that whole space. So it's always kind of an assumption that like, well, that's kind of, we could do something there. It's like, well, it kind of takes away from what that park's actually built for. And Joyce is similar. Joyce's are more of our sports complex. We just had the huge Mid-America Soccer Classic down there. That was a 3-day soccer tournament that went pretty good this year. I know a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, nope, the traffic issues that come along with it. But that was a pretty successful event. And it's nothing for us to have 40 soccer fields laid out with 3,000 kids there. So they're all purpose driven, and which makes it unique to the area, and not just putting a green space there. We try to get feedback from the people that live in those neighborhoods to see how they want their parks utilized, which is, well, especially I partner with the city this year, and that's something we're working on right now, where we don't have, I want more, I don't say we don't have, but in my opinion, we don't have enough engagement in our parks, and more specifically from teen groups and maybe down to middle school. I say that 10 to 18-year-old range. I don't feel like our parks are accommodating, and that's a large demographic that I don't want to say don't acknowledge, but we're not supporting right now in our parks. And if you go to most of our areas, our splash pads, our playgrounds, they're great for kids, 3 to 8 years old. They use the splash pads, they use the playgrounds, but outside of that, there's just not a lot of opportunities for teens there. So we've been partnering with the city and working with local groups like the Boys and Girls Club and the Hamilton YMCA to develop a programming initiative to give that older group of kids an outlet in our parks for the season. It's hit a few bumps this year. I'm still trying to pull the trigger on moving forward with a version of that programming for this year. But the goal right now is essentially summer session. We'll have a programming initiative with the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA and 6 of our parks that'll rotate throughout the summer, and it'll be 7 days of programming. I mean, they're going to have, we're trying to make sure we acknowledge at least a large kind of variety of interests, because yes, a lot of kids do play sports, so that's kind of an easy one where we can provide soccer goals, football things like that to engage kids. But also the Boys and Girls Club is focusing more on life skills type things, where we may have a mobile salon come through to do kids hair. We're going to partner with a couple groups that show kids what ingredients go into food, how to cook it, and then send them home with those ingredients so they can recreate that at home. And so we're trying to kind of give these kids an outlet and also provide skills for them by attending some of this programming. So this will be the pilot for us. It's a big step in a different direction for us. We've had to focus so much of our efforts, and more specifically, Steve Timmer prior to me had to focus so much effort into construction and rehabilitation of buildings and just rebuilding that infrastructure in our parks to make them approachable by people, because they weren't before. We had a lot of, I wouldn't even say neglected, but some dilapidated buildings and restrooms and things like that, where now our parks are approachable. Now we got to get people to go to them. So, in the past, we've budgeted, that $5,000-ish to do movies in the park, things like that, which is great. And we'll continue to do that, but we're trying to increase that tenfold and look at spending $50,000 in a year, that's a big step for us. And we've gotten the city to partner with us and give some funds to support that. And then we're even trying to, donate some of our material. Like one of the groups needs an enclosed trailer. We have one that we don't use, so we'll probably let them utilize that just to get a pilot program rolling to show that this is a sustainable and engaging program, so that we can legitimately budget that amount of money for programming in the future. So I'm hopeful. I'm just hopeful I see some engagement this year. We're looking to do it for 3 minimum, and then build on the programming off of there. I think if we can show some success, we'll get some partnership from other organizations, and but we'll see what happens. Optimistic about it, but we'll see. Teens are a difficult, kind of a difficult demographic to crack. It's been very interesting meeting with them at their, we go to their school and meet with them during lunch. I was actually really surprised with some of the feedback we got. We're like, what parks do you go to? Why do you go there? What can we do to make you feel more welcome and more engaged in your parks? And it's a lot simpler than we thought it was, really. We thought we were going to get the big ticket items like, well, we want a pool, which that did come up, but that's a expense far outside of our capabilities. But it was simple things like, I just want a place to go meet with my friends and do homework. It's like, really, and that's something that's pretty simple for us to do. Or providing Wi-Fi in all of our parks, which is something I know the city's kind of working on with some putting up some cell towers and different things around. But so we're just trying to look at all these different outlets to figure out how to engage that population in our parks. But yeah, we'll see what happens, because it's really it's just been difficult for us, but we'll get there.
Adam, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes, you can.
I think what we're seeing here is a major shift from, like you said, construction and maintenance, and more, passive involvement with the parks as far as, the crew, So what you're talking about is really partnering with organizations. And I know your philosophy is, the parks are there to be used. They need to be maintained, but they're there to be used. And that's what you're talking about, is trying to get people to use them. So a couple questions here. You don't have a program director, I don't think, do you? Okay. So you're really depending on the organizations you're partnering with to be that kind of outsourced program director for their programs, partnering with you, it sounds
Yes.
like. And okay. And could you also talk a little bit about how people actually use the park? When does something have to be pre-planned? When does something have to be reserved? Is that true in just parks like Markham Park, or is that true in some of the, local smaller neighborhood parks as well? If I'm a resident or I run a program or something like that, how do I go about, considering the park as a spot to utilize and implement family reunion, whatever?
Thank you. You kind of reeled me back in, because I'll ramble. Dan knows that, but so I appreciate that. But anyways, yes. As you said, no, we do not have a programming director. It's kind of we're a small group. Like I said, there's 3 of us in the office. I do have some background in programming as with previous exposure to Blue Ash. Kevin Noonan has a little more than I do, as he also was a former Blue Ash employee. So, he was involved with a lot of the events and stuff they put on at Summit Park. So as of now, if you ask me, what's our current scenario and what do I see that being? As of now, it's largely relying upon partnerships. And that is, we can kind of be that financial support, and we have the asset, we have the park, we have the financial backing, we can come up with the ideas, but as far as implementation, we don't have the personnel to carry out this regular programming. We can do some one-offs, we can do a few small things, but it's largely reliant on partnerships. For an example, the solar eclipse a couple weeks ago, that was a big one, for where partnering heavily with like the chamber, and they have a lot of outreach that we could have, but we don't necessarily have all the contacts in that regular outreach that they utilize for their events. So Laura was coordinating with food trucks, and Dan's helping with just every aspect of it. And so, but we were able to kind of put all of our heads together and utilize each group's strong suit and pull off supporting 3,000 plus people showing up in Markham Park on a random Monday. So I see more of that going forward. If you ask me what the end goal is, yeah, I'd love to be that. I would love to have, like I had at my former job, where we have a full programming and events team. We used to have a programming director, an assistant, and then like a staff of 12 to 20 at any time that were part-time to pull off these events. And that group partnered with Parks. Parks did a lot of the infrastructure, and then the programming team handled a lot of the details of the events or programming. And that's as far as I think we would do. It wasn't a flea, it was oh goodness. It was similar to the city flea, but they did that at Summit Park. And then we would do farmers markets and yoga in the park and Zumba. I mean, it was pretty much every day we had something going on. I'd love to see that. And I think we'll get there. I think it'll be a couple years, but I think it'll happen. And it'll just be building that personnel side here so that we're not overwhelming the rest of our staff. And then going back to your second point, that's actually there's a lot of answers to that question on how to move forward with reserving a park. Markham's very straightforward. That's something that we prefer to plan out as early as possible because we do have so much interest in there. And it's probably the most formal reservation process that we have, where we have a rental form that spells out all the language of liabilities and deposits, what access is required as far as utilities like electric, water, really even sound on the River's Edge stage, despite we don't really handle that. If you have a sound person, that's great, and you can do that. And sorry, I was reading the chat real quick. But that one's pretty straightforward. We try to get you in as early as possible. We have people reaching out. I mean, it can be as early if they hold an event in June, they may follow up with us the next week to try to reserve it for the next year. So we've been talking about this internally because we ran into a couple issues very early this year with conflicting dates on events. And so we're trying to kind of put a date on that where we maybe don't accept any reservations until, March 1st or February 1st, just so we don't have that potential of overbooking or something like that. On the other side of that, I had a group reach out to me last year. They're looking to do a kind of neighborhood engagement, not necessarily a religious event, but I forget what he called it. It was mostly music in a tent with food and things like that. He wanted to use Markham, but his budget didn't really allow him to use Markham. And we try to be very fair. And I mean, the price is what it is with Markham, and we try not to, make exceptions on that. So, I had him come in, we met with him. I'm like, well, what are you trying to achieve? And he told me the neighborhood he wanted to engage. I'm like, well, let's do it would Lindenwold Park work? And he's like, well, I didn't know I could do events there. It's like, well, we can do events anywhere. I can make that work. So we go down, kind of walk the property and got a layout of what he was wanting to do. He's like, yeah, this will work. I'm like, okay, we've never rented this before. Let me come up with a price. So, I mean, we can make things happen if we need to. And it worked out great. And so, I think and that's what we're trying to do with engaging the communities, is being like, yeah, you can use that park. Because I think the assumption is, well, I can't do anything in the park without doing a formal, this formal reservation, which if you're going to occupy the park with a tent and things like that for a couple of days, then yes, that needs to be formal. If you just want to gather in the park for, say, it's like a book club on a Thursday, I mean, that's your public park you're able to use. That's not a problem. So I think it's trying to get that word out there that yes and no, there are reservations required and there's not. So it just depends on how big your event is and if you're restricting access to the park. Really, if you're restricting access to the park is when the reservation comes into play. If you're just, loosely meeting, like we have the city's actually doing a soccer clinic next Monday at Markham. for what they're doing, they're not really restricting the park, so it doesn't really require a reservation. It's just people happen to be gathering there to do a soccer clinic. That's fine, not a problem. The best thing to do, I try not to be a roadblock in anybody's utilization of the park. If you're ever questioning, can I do this or can I do that? Shoot me an email. That's fine. I'll take the lead on it. We try to be as accommodating as possible and not so strict that it kind of dissuades people from using the parks for, gatherings or small events or things like that. I
Adam,
was reading. Yes,
Jennifer has a good question tied into this.
I was just
I
reading
know
that.
yeah. Do you guys have a calendar that you put out? If somebody wanted to say, geez, I wonder what's going on in the Hamilton Parks this weekend.
No, but speaking to that, I love that idea because it's funny. Say, Dan, if you called me this morning and you're like, hey, can we use Markham on June 26th? We have an internal calendar with everybody's dates on it, and that's as small as a art in the park. That's as big as the city flea. We list all the city's concerts on there because we have to do some kind of background work even on concert days that aren't ours. We do the trash and a lot of that kind of background work over there. So we have to have it internally organized. But no, we don't have that. And feeding into that, Kevin's been working on. We're looking at redoing our entire website. It is functional. I don't like it, but it's functional. And the reason behind that is going back to reserving things for, as far as reserving shelters, reserving Culligan Lodge, doing events and things like that. It works because you do have to pretty much call us to do that, which it's a good model. It works, but I'm going to speak from my personal belief. If I walk up to a shelter and it just says, call this number to reserve, I'm not calling. Sorry, I'm not a phone person. If I can do it online, great. If not, it's not worth it. So we're looking at redoing the website, but then partnering that with each shelter, each we'll say rentable facility will have a QR code on a sign. You can click on that. It's going to take you right to a reservation website that also shows you the calendar of availability, and you can just book it right on the spot. That's more my speed, what I would prefer. The only issue is our reservations never shut down for the year. We don't really have a slow time of year for reservations. So in order to kind of mesh that system with what we currently use is not logistically, it's difficult. So I think we just need to make sure before we would ever do that, so we don't have double booking, so we don't have any of that issue and all of our calendars coordinate. But back to that, I would love to have a calendar that, yes, it shows shelters and things like that of what's available, but also even if it's not our specific event, what's going on in our parks, promote that, hey, City Fleas this weekend, hey, this is going on. There's a soccer tournament going on at Joyce. There's, whatever's going on to help you plan, because I can tell you now, if there's a soccer tournament at Joyce and you don't know about it and your kids want to go to Joyce that weekend, it's going to be difficult. So it makes it very hard for a lot of people to plan until they show up and realize something's either going on or it's not accessible. So I do love that. I'll say that we're working on that. Don't have it yet, but we're working on that.
If I could throw something in, if you guys did something as simple as did a page on your website, then it could connect to the app. Able to do that on the app. I was just looking on the app too. It connects to your website, but when you try to click the phone number, it's not available. So
Nice to know.
Change that because it goes to your website and then you can pull up the number. But I was just thinking, because if you had the QR code for Explore Hamilton at your different shelters and stuff like that, they could use the app.
I love that. That'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, it's kind of that's why I said, really that it hasn't stopped with the capital improvements. I mean, we're getting ready to do a huge paving project this summer over at Potter's Golf Course, but trying to get out of this, not get out of build mode, but we're we're shifting a little bit in what we're working on, and we're starting to get into this side of it to make our parks a little more accessible and usable to where it is easy to do these things without having to fumble through and find a phone number to call somebody. And trust me, our people in the office would love it if our phone was not ringing as much. So if we can eliminate 60% of phone calls, because most of them are just questions about availability on shelters. We probably get no shortage of 30 to 40 phone calls a day just on shelter rentals. And having that conversation, I can hear Linda down at our front desk over and over of that date's not available, it's not available, it's not available. It's like, man, we've got to have a better way to do this to A, ease her workload, and B, just make it easier for people to book things in our parks. So that's kind of the fun stuff we're getting to work on a little bit. That we're getting ready to build 4 more shelters. So this is a good time for us to roll out that new reservation and new program, so we may have something coordinated on that by July when that construction starts, hopefully. Anyways. But and like I said, I don't know if anybody does have any questions, feel free to just shout out. Because I can fill time. But I know a lot of people have questions that maybe they have always kind of wondered about how we function, or just it can be as random as you want. It's not going to bother me. So
Well, I'll give you some kudos, Adam. Yesterday, I got to spend some time at Milliken Woods with 2 of my grandkids. They had an amazing time. They love the splash pad there when that gets open. They can't wait. They're asking like how many more
I know.
days, basically.
We've gotten that phone call a lot recently, especially when we had that week of like 80-degree days.
Right.
Everybody's like, "So when does splash pads open?" I was like, "Memorial Day."
Not
We
quite
can't
yet.
we
Yeah,
can't
not
make it
quite yet.
earlier. And
But
then
they're
we usually get that in about mid to late August too. They're like, "When's the
is it
last
still
day?"
open?
I'm like, Labor Day. They're like, "Well, is it going to be open later? It's supposed to be hot." It's like, and we try to make that call like the week before Labor Day. Yes, if it's showing 95 for the next week, we can keep them open. But usually we're ready for them to be closed by Labor Day, because those are much more intense to take care of than a lot of people think. I have 2 staff that is all they're dedicated to. Those are treated just like swimming pools, fully chlorinated, acidified. They go through the same health like permitting regulations. So I have to have, I think, 3 daily water quality checks on those. And there's 6 or 7 locations. So I mean, it's very time consuming to do that. But yeah, that's funny. Those phone calls started a couple weeks ago, so I kind of laughed that you said that, because we're pretty much ready to go on those. I think we're going to start testing next week, turning them on. So it always times out to where there's groups of kids that happen to be in the park from the schools when we're testing them, and you'll see we'll turn them on, they get super excited and then super sad when we shut them back off, so you feel like the worst person in the world. But I know that's coming. We'll probably be out there in the next week or 2 doing that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
And Milliken's a great park. I mean, there's a ton of space there, a ton of shelters.
Yes.
I love that you can walk under the street to get back and forth between the one side and the other. It's probably within 5 minutes of my house. So
that's a neat story on that park, because I laugh at any of you that know Steve Timmer can understand where he is coming from. That, and I'm not from Hamilton, so I go off of some previous information on a lot of this stuff. Milliken was not the most approachable park for a long time, I guess. And it just, I mean,
it definitely
a lot
wasn't.
of excessive dead trees. Just was not an attractive place to be. And Steve's big goal back when he kind of started the conservancy was like, I'm gonna make Milliken the most popular park in the park system. And I think he got a lot of people that were like, okay, sure, whatever. And that is one of our prettiest parks, our most utilized. I hate to say good luck renting a shelter there. I mean, they start calling in January to book that for July. So, and if you're going to try to get to the splash pad, that's even more difficult if you want one of the ones close to the splash pad. But that is a really cool park. It's got a ton of different aspects in it. I mean, splash pad, 2 playgrounds. It's got disc golf throughout. Um, we're redoing a few of the shelters over there that, granted, they were really cool because they had the rock floors, but they're also kind of dangerous. We redid one 2 years ago, and then the other one's getting redone in like a week. So we're going to be over there ripping some floors out and repouring concrete and different things. But it's actually in one of those shelters that's on the screen right now, similar to that. But yeah, that's a great park, and I that's one that I think has a lot of opportunity for us to utilize for events and programming, because we see the impact it has when we do things over there. Um, we partner with 17 Strong in the city to do the trick or treating over there. I went last year. I think there is a line of kids for every bit of 2 hours that wrapped like from the back driveway all the way around to the parking lot, and it never went down for like 2 hours. It's just this constant flow of people. So I think, those neighborhoods have all these kids that are just looking for a kind of a space, and if you can just really minimal effort provide something, they'll come out. So we just need to try to do more of that.
Yeah, definitely. And any of those types of events we can always add to the community calendar. So that goes on
Yep.
the Explore Hamilton app too.
Yeah, and
What
I think it is that simple though. I think it's just getting the word out there, and because we have a limited audience as far as our Facebook pages and stuff. So I think that is like you said, Laura, using um your guys' outreach and using the app and things like that to get the word out, and it'll make a world of difference.
Yep, or definitely. Well, it sounds like for that event, you don't actually need any extra promo.
Yeah,
You've got
oh
that
my
for
gosh.
pretty well.
It's grown so much in the last couple years, and that's just a fun event. That's one that kind of not wraps up our season, but it's a late season thing, and it's a lot of fun. If you have a chance to go work it or volunteer, please do it, because it's a lot. A lot of the booths out there are local businesses and organizations that come out and do it. I mean, we even had Raising Cane's out there. They brought a truck out last year. So
Oh,
we
cool.
everyone's welcome. So if you're ever interested, there's a lot of people to reach out to, and you can just set up a table and hand out candy, and you'll be the neighborhood's best friend with all the kids for a while.
Oh, we'll have to check that out next year. I got
Yeah.
another question though. What are some of
Sure.
the other amenities across the park system? So, we've got like shelters and places where you can rent a building. You've got disc golf. What are some other
Yeah.
things?
So um granted, we partner with Miami Conservancy District in the city. So I mean, we are very fortunate to have I know a lot of people call it, you'll hear it called a few different things, a recreational trail, the bike path that runs all the way through the city. We're actually responsible for some of the maintenance on that. But I mean, that's a huge amenity to have that I don't, I know it's well known, but I don't think people are as aware of how far that goes. I mean, it runs all the way through Joyce Park down through Fairfield. It runs north all the way up to Dayton, really, if you wanted to go the full length. That one's a popular one that's kind of underutilized. I wouldn't say unutilized, underutilized. Um, the disc golf, a lot of, and I will say we get feedback on the disc golf. Apparently, it's one of the best in the tri-state. Had no idea. We get a lot of feedback from people that play regularly around the area. They're like, nope, this is one of the best layouts that we have. Um, that small cabin's one that a lot of people don't know about. It's not luxurious. It's more just and it's a small space. It probably hosts around 25 to 30 people, but it's pretty popular. And it does have a small grill with it. Our big ones are the shelters. We do have a couple different sizes. Most of them are 24 by 30. We do not, I mean, we don't even guarantee electric in them, but they are pretty much booked. Outside of the snow months, they're booked. And it can be anything from birthday parties to grad parties to family reunions. Pelican Lodge is our other popular one that is also booked constantly. Um, that's a good space for up to, I mean, I know you guys use it fairly or a lot of groups around town use it regularly. I think we can get want to say it's 120 or 150 people by code. And it's actually even accessible to open up doors on both ends and have access to a front and rear patio. The rear patio is a little more intimate. The front patio is kind of closer to the parking lot, but I mean, you can really expand the space. And it has a full, I call it more of a catering kitchen. You're not, I mean, convection ovens, things like that if you're catering the event. So that, and then recently we're trying to utilize our golf courses a little more, which Tiffany, I'll get with you after this. Potters and Twin Run both have pretty decent, if you want to call them more of a hosting space. I mean, Twin Run has an outdoor patio that easily holds 120 to 150 people and it's fully covered. And it goes right into our pro shop with a full concession with alcohol, food, whatever you need. So, I mean, and that's just something we're trying to use a little more. We've had a few groups that are familiar with the golf courses reach out to use that. We're like, yeah, sure, no problem. As long as there's not an outing going on, we can accommodate. Potters is one that's a little more recently. We just had a full renovation of that pro shop last winter until about April. So we have an indoor space that actually feeds into an outdoor patio area that it's a little smaller than Twin, but offers covered and uncovered tables. That's also available for a rental, and also full bar service that we have and food there as well if you're not catering. So, we have a lot of these things that, like going back to the kind of sources of revenue, we have our consistent ones. Colligan's consistent, our shelters are consistent, but we're trying to look at the spaces we do have and kind of reevaluating, okay, can we rent this out? What's a good, price? What's the interest? And we'll see what happens. And then also, yes, Foundation Field is another one. If you're part of a baseball group, that one's tough to get into because we do partner with Miami University, Hamilton Joe's, and a lot of tournament organizations to play baseball out there. The North End baseball fields, I will tell you, are always available. I'm trying to get those a little more utilized. Softball has kind of, and I'm talking like adult softball, has really fallen off in the last few years. So we're trying to get a little more activation on those fields. Fortunately, I did have 2 groups reach out last week, so hopefully getting a little more traction on that. Our soccer fields now at Joyce are always booked up. Those are just constant, which is a good thing. But yeah, the baseball fields, we have the accommodations, but it's just finding the interest. And I think there's just been a big kind of shift in interest in a lot of kids of what they're involved in. And going back to pre-meeting when we were talking about some of the travel ball and things like that, that's more geared toward local teams, and we're trying to be very accommodating with being like, you know what, we'll provide the space at a minimal fee, just to get kind of that reactivation going.
And Adam, we've got another question. With the shelter demand, are there plans to add additional shelter covered areas in the parks?
Yes, absolutely. We're doing 4 this year. We're putting in 4 24 by 30 shelters. Let's see, we submitted our deposit for that about 2 weeks ago. I think our last timeline looked about mid-July. We'll be doing 2 additional at Jim Grimm. Those were actually slated to be installed 2 years ago. Then Potters came up and kind of took over our renovations as far as improvements in the parks. With that being complete, we're doing 2 there, and we're actually adding 2 to Benninghofen, which, if you're a resident of Lindenwold, I've gotten a lot of good feedback on that because we have multiple parks in Lindenwold, but no shelters. So we're putting 2 24 by 30s at Benninghofen, which has the spray ground. So I think that's a good move to kind of not only offer that accommodation down there, but you'll have access to a splash pad, restrooms, things like that. And then we're going to try to do an audit this summer. Kevin did one when he started last year of what, we're trying to find those, lack of a better term, those dead zones in our park system of, where do we not have amenities? Where can we do that? And, working with this new contractor this year on shelters, I'm like, if you can hold close to that price moving forward, we may be doing 4 more next year and can continue this for a while. Just to try to get rid of the dead zones in our park system. So for this year, I would say tentatively, if they can hold kind of close to the price, 2 to 4 more next year. So yeah, it is expanding on the shelter rentals.
Adam, what's the one park that you don't think that people know exists and it's a hidden treasure?
I'm going to look at your list real quick. So, and actually, I talked about this at Rotary not too long ago. The one, and I'm glad to see it got some traction a couple weeks ago. Sims Park is the one with the most potential, I feel like. The way that park's laid out, its location, it's got a cool history. If you're not familiar with, I'll let you go down the rabbit hole of the Hollow Earth and all of that stuff that goes along with the park. But it's a unique park. It has, if you're not familiar, it's located, let me see, about 2 blocks south of like the city administration buildings. And it's actually huge. I mean, it's bigger acreage than Markham is. And a lot of people just don't realize it's there. And we've been talking for some time about revitalizing it because there's a cool green space there. There's actually basketball courts there. It just has so much potential, and it can impact a pretty underserved community and draw people into that area for development. And even if you're working downtown, it's a 2-block walk. So I'm trying to, look at, I know Markham's a popular space in the summer. You'll see a lot of people just taking their lunchtime walk, eating lunch down there, just trying to get out and get some air. I want this to be the next option that, hey, this is actually a shorter walk and it's right behind your offices if you're near the city administration building. So that's when I'm really, I was happy to see the interest in that, hosting an event out there. We hadn't had an event out there at least since I've been here. And, the city partnered with another group to do the Hollow Earth Fest a couple weeks ago. I heard it was really successful. I think it engaged people in a park that they either didn't know existed or just kind of drove past it all the time and never really gave it much thought. So, it's that kind of engagement that we're looking at to, see what we can do as far as development, because we just haven't really invested in that area in a while. So, if I want to be honest, I'd like to see a huge fundraising opportunity for us and not just add to that park. I want to completely redo it and rethink it over the next 5 to 7 years. And it would be like, I want that like Markham level investment. So very significant, talking millions of dollars. There's no promise there yet, but it's a conversation we find ourselves having more and more. So I think I would call that my hidden gem. The other one's Riverside Natural Area. I'm kind of a naturist, I guess you could say. I went to school for conservation and things, so I like to see that down there. One of the grants we're working on right now would actually fund, there's a trail on the north side of that area that's fairly flat, and we're trying to fund a story walk, which if you're not familiar, I'd Google that when you're done. It's kind of a cool engagement in parks, and then also maybe even gravel and pave and make an accessible trail for wheelchairs. So, but yeah, just trying to get people out like, hey, there's nature right outside your back door. Like, and if you go over to Riverside, it just disconnects you from the city immediately. It's amazing kind of how it's just like another world down there. And it's over 200 acres. It's actually, I know it says 200, I think it's around 230. And I mean, there's ponds, wetlands, kind of native areas for trees and different native plants. There's a pretty substantial trail system down there that we took over maintenance from the group that did it before us. So, I mean, they've been maintained a little higher standard recently. So, I mean, yeah, all this is accessible, and you can go and do, I mean, a multi-mile hike down there right out your back door on the south side of the city. So definitely I'd say that's probably one of my other hidden or favorite ones that I don't think of people do enough. And see, I saw that, Jennifer. I didn't get to go to it. So everybody that went to Sims for the Hollow Earth Fest said it was a good time. And turned out really well. So I think that opened a lot of eyes to doing more events in that park at Sims. So yeah, definitely agree. And I'm glad to hear that you had a good time.
I had never been there. So, and of course I didn't know what Hollow Earth was either. So I got a full education.
It's very interesting. If you have the time to research it, it's very interesting.
So Adam, if someone would like to visit your website, if you'd like to give your URL, contact information.
Yes. Here, I'll put it in the chat just so people have it. If you want to reach out to me directly, and like I said, I do tell people I check my email all the time, so I may respond at some odd times a day. It's nothing for me to fire off emails at 9 and 10 o'clock. So if I try not to in case you have your notifications set. But yeah, feel free, and it can be about anything. Literally I'm kind of an open book on stuff, and we try to be in a smaller team. We try to address things as quickly as possible. And yes, I'm not a multitasker. I can't talk while I type, so I apologize. But yeah, that's and then if you want, here's my direct line as well. So yeah, email, that's my direct line to the office, and that's our website. If you call in here, you'll either get to talk to Linda or Karen. They can help direct you to anything you could ever need as far as reservations, what's available, what isn't available. If you have any questions outside of that, please feel free to reach out to me. I can at least guide you in the right direction. If I don't have the answer, I'll find it for you. That's, I'll never just say I don't know. It'll be, let me find out and I'll get back to you.
So Laura, before we wrap up, I just want to say, we love partnering with Adam and the Parks Department, and even my crazy ideas, he doesn't say no. So, and we're working on one of those right now. So stay tuned for August.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing some crazy things in Markham Park. So, we really appreciate you being, such a partner with us and such a partner with the whole city of Hamilton. And, unfortunately, you don't live here, but maybe we can change that someday. So
yeah. I was just, it's been, I didn't have a lot of exposure to Hamilton. I'm from Wilmington, for those of you that are familiar. Grew up farming over in that area. And then my wife is a nurse at Children's Hospital. I've kind of been all over the place working golf and parks and things. And I always say we tried to move here when I took this job, and then the housing market did not allow that. I got outbid heavily every time I bid on a house over here. So we have a small farm over in Morrow, Ohio, kind of between Lebanon, just east of Lebanon. But I've very much enjoyed working in Hamilton. It's interesting because it does not feel like 65,000 people. It reminds me of the town where I grew up that had 10,000, because everybody's very passionate about the city, willing to help you with anything. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to ask Dan to help me on whatever we're doing in parks, because I just feel like there's a lot of investment from the groups in the city, and it's been a great experience. And that's why I always tell people, that's why I don't mind driving over here every day. It's not a big deal to me, because it is enjoyable to come to Hamilton and see, hear the background, see that continued development in the city. And just I'm glad that we get to share and be a part of it. It's that simple.
Well, Adam, sounds like we're very, very lucky to have you and have your investment in our city. The chamber is definitely happy to partner with anything. And like I said, you buy into Dan's crazy ideas all the time.
Absolutely.
So once you start with that, it's just going to escalate. So just be aware.
That's fine. I'm not a roadblock ever. We'll find a way to make whatever work. It's fine by me.
Yeah, we're excited because I mean, the parks are beautiful. Steve has done a great job. You've done a great job of continuing his vision for making the parks way more accessible, usable by families and neighborhoods, and make it walkable from my house, no less. I mean, that's what it's for. I mean, that's what all these parks are for. We've got hundreds and hundreds of acres that are great to grab your family, run out there, play with the kids, just hang out. And I saw people walking, I saw people doing frisbee golf, the kids playing. So that was exactly what the vision is for the parks, and I'm excited that we're going forward in that area.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear. And like I said, it's I saw a group out playing. It was just random. The Hamilton schools were out here like Friday. Markham was absolutely packed. But that was one didn't have a reservation. That's fine. Use the park. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, they're gonna tear up the grass. Grass regrows. Don't worry about that. I don't worry about that stuff. I'd rather see the park packed every day than worry about making sure my grass is perfect. So that's what they're there for.
Exactly. So
Yep.
thank you very much. We appreciate you taking some time
Absolutely.
to share about the parks. We will be back for our next coffee on May 14th. So that'll be 9 to 10 a.m. again on Zoom. So everybody, please mark your calendars, and we will see you here again. We're live on Facebook, and we've got this all resourced on our YouTube channel also. So you can always go back and resource any of the coffees. So thank you all for getting on today, and we will see you all in a couple weeks.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Thank you.